This is the Waupaca Area School District Board of Education meeting.
Thank you to everyone for coming this evening. I appreciate your making time in your schedules. I realize that's not always the easiest thing to do in today's environment, but thank you. With that, we will move to the pledge, and I'm going to ask Ms. Duda to lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. With that, I will call the meeting to order. Let the roll call reflect that everyone except Mr. Shamble are in attendance. Mr. Shamble is excused for the evening, for this meeting. Next item would be the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'd like to make a request to move items Roman numeral 9, B, 4, A, and B, which are the preliminary notices of non-renewal, to remove those from the consent agenda and address them as separate items immediately prior to consideration of the consent agenda. And I would move approval of the agenda with those changes.
Good. Motion to approve the agenda with modification as described. Are there any questions on your requested modification?
No, I agree. I'm sorry, Sandy, where did you want to move that to? I didn't catch that.
That would go
Consider it right before the
prior
consent
to, okay.
agenda.
Okay.
Okay, everyone understands the amendment? Okay, that being the case, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Could you speak up? It's very difficult to hear back.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, we just approved the agenda with a modification. Okay. With that, move to public comment. Is there anyone here that wishes to address the board? Yes, sir. If you could identify yourself, please.
My name is John Ladke. I'm an alumni of Waupaca High School and UW Stevens Point. And I would like to comment about the non-renewal of Joseph Jansen's teaching contract. I was one of his students, and as a freshman, I came to this school, and I had no direction with my life. Freshman year, Mr. Jansen took me under his wing and let me take his world history class. I was stuck with a whole class of seniors, and these classes opened my mind to a whole new world. I later became a Rotary Youth Exchange student, and I was in Turkey then. I came back for my senior year, and I was allowed to take his AP World History class. I got a 5 on the test. That's the highest score you can get. Because of that class, my direction in life has taken the best possible path I could have ever had. And I know that's the case for many other people who I went to school with here. I want you to seriously reconsider the non-renewal of that man's teaching here, as I am now becoming a teacher myself and have just been hired for a job at an American school, the 3rd largest private school in Africa, in Casablanca, Morocco. And I owe that to Mr. Jansen. To me, he is one of the people who has made the largest impact in my life. And losing him here at Waupaca High School would be the loss of possibly one of its greatest assets. And with only a year left until he is able to retire, that is something that I think should be seriously reconsidered by the board. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I appreciate the opportunity to speak before the board today. You're all volunteers and I've been there before, and I feel it. Thank you very much for your service. I'm here also to talk on behalf of the...
If I could you identify
Thomas
yourself?
Miller. I live
Thank
in
you.
Parfreyville.
Thank you.
if you know where Parfyville is.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I'm here to speak on the last item on your agenda, which is Joe Jansen's non-renewal. I don't know where this is coming from. I don't have any knowledge of what the board or who is moving this forward, but I think you can sense the community unease in a move such as this to renew one of the better teachers in this district, period. He's shown that over 15 years. This student here is a model of that. My son is a 2013 alum of this school who went on to Madison and now is a success himself. His hardest course wasn't calculus at this school. It was Joe Jansen's AP courses. He's probably also your best English teacher, one of them, now there's many. He's one of your best English teachers in this district, even though he doesn't teach that discipline. He knows grammar and English quite well. All I'm saying is, if there's a serious, lacks of something or whatever, maybe consider a non-renewal, but his academic credentials cannot be touched. He's been recognized by the state for his AP excellence. And for a non-renewal to be on this agenda, or any agenda, for a shining star like that is just boggles a lot of the community's mind. The chamber doesn't want the stars of this school system to leave. They want this to be a selling point for growth in this community. And Joe Jansen's the exact type of teacher we need in these times at this school for however many years he continues to stay here. You're lucky to have him. I'd want to keep him because everyone else would want him. His credentials stand are impeccable. So I would put this non-renewal away and table it, period. Don't even, and renew this guy and keep him as long as you can. Because I'm from Stevens Point and other schools, they'd love to take him. They would. Thank you for your time and your service. Please renew this man's contract. He is a shining star.
Thank you. Any other comment? Yes.
I'll be very brief because I'm married to him, so we already said a lot of what we were going to say. I'm Nancy Miller, and yes, our son is a 2013 graduate. When Lucas had him for freshman world history, which you have to qualify to get into. It's a difficult class. And the first time I met Mr. Jansen was at that teacher conference, and Lucas had gotten a B+. And our son is a very good student, but I said, this is the hardest class you will have, and this is preparing you for college. I said to Mr. Jansen, I thought a B+ was great, and he said, no, your son could get an A if he wasn't working hard enough. And that was one of the best things he could have said, and Lucas never got another B from that man. Luckily it was all A's, not the other way. And I said to Lucas at that point, this is going to be a teacher who you'll remember for the rest of your life. He's preparing you for college. He's preparing you for life. He's making sure you guys learn how to think, learn how to assess knowledge, to learn fact from fiction. That it's so much more than just history. I can't imagine a better teacher in the school district, and I also urge you not to renew his contract and not have him leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a minor, it's actually not a minor point, but a point of clarification. This evening before the board is a preliminary notice of non-renewal, and there is a distinction between that and an actual non-renewal. But without going into detail, I just wanted to make that clarification. Any other public comment? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your spending some time with us tonight. With that, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of minutes. I'll entertain a motion with regard to the minutes of the February 13, 2018 regular board meeting.
Make a motion we approve the minutes.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next item is the approval of the February 23rd special board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion or questions? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And finally, the February 27th, 2018 board workshop.
So moved for approval.
Second.
Motion to approve and a second. Are there any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to communications. Mr. Neon?
Yes, so last
Tucker.
week,
I'm sorry.
that's quite all right. Last week, March 5th through the 9th, was National School Breakfast Week. So a big thank you goes out to Dar and her team from Chartwells as they continue to provide healthy, nutritious beginning meals for all of our students here in the school district. Can we move right into the report?
Please do.
After reviewing 18 candidates for the Waupaca High School principal position, a team of stakeholders, including students, parents, staff, and administrators, interviewed 3 highly qualified candidates. Although there were multiple high-quality candidates, Mike Werbowski has been selected, offered, and accepted the position of high school principal. Mike is currently the principal of Mount Horeb High School and has 18 years of experience as an administrator in Kaukauna and Rhinelander, as well as Mount Horeb. Mike is sorry that he is unable to be present this evening, but wants you to know that he is excited and eager to join our team. With state and national attention focused squarely on school safety, State Representative Sandy Pope began circulating a group of bills today called the Wisconsin Student Safety Package. The package includes revenue limit adjustments, certain school safety safety expenditures, a budget appropriation for school mental health programs, grant dollars targeting violence prevention, open records exemptions, and a budget appropriation for school employee training programs. These are only the first of what we suspect will be a number of bills introduced in our state. Tomorrow, of course, marks the 1-month anniversary of the tragic loss of life in Parkland, Florida. Our hearts go out to all those who experienced the unnecessary loss of life. Although there are national efforts underway to engage students in the protest, the administration asks that students and community members respect the rights of those who wish to remain in the classroom and not be disruptive to the learning environment. Students who choose to participate must do so peacefully and should comply with the requests of the supervising adults. The Waupaca Breakfast Rotary Club sponsored the fundraiser known as Casino Royale on February 16th and realized a 30% increase in donations. More than $9,000 were raised to support the efforts of Rotary, one of which is education right here in Waupaca. Last year's event was able to provide resources for a 3D printer, an egg incubator, and a drone. So congratulations to the Rotary Breakfast Club. Retired director Michael George was present at the Capitol recently to hear our 8th grade band and choir perform. Mr. George was kind enough to pen a letter to the middle school staff complimenting them on their performances. The 1-year reunion of the event, referred to as #WaupacaWay2K30, is scheduled for Thursday, April 26th from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. and will take place in the high school commons area. The reunion of stakeholders involved in the community conversation will provide the opportunity to hear the district's efforts to date as they relate to the identified priorities in April of 2017. It will also provide local stakeholders with the opportunity to modify, adjust, or affirm the manner in which the district is proceeding with the priorities. We hope that all will join us.
Question over here.
Yes, sir.
The information we have, that's written in 3 different places, it says April 22nd.
I believe it's April 26th. It's a Thursday, and I'd ask Carol to just confirm that while I'm concluding this report.
We'll verify that.
Thank you. Finally, congratulations to our Chain Exploration Center leadership team on the completion of the charter school grant application. The grant writing team spent many hours crafting a document that will position the Chain Exploration Center for the most favorable grant award possible. Additionally, the current enrollments for the CEC show 57 students have applied to the school. If the enrollments exceed 21 students per grade, a lottery will be held on March 19th. March 19th is also the night scheduled to provide parents with specific information about the school, its vision, and the project-based learning. Congratulations to all the students, staff, and supporters of this great new learning opportunity in the school district of Waupaca. It is the 26th. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, before we move on to board monitoring, obviously a lot of information in the administrator's report. I would like to compliment the high school principal for the letter that was written to the parents of the high school students with regard to the walkout, and very well written. As a result of that, I've received input from other parents as well, appreciating the information that was provided and the fact that the school is allowing, in a peaceful and quiet way, individuals to express their concerns. I also did see an interesting posting that perhaps I can, actually it was read to me, I don't do Facebook that much, but with regard to what students can do in addition to that, and it's a walk up instead of a walk out, in which they contact some students that may normally be sitting alone or things such as that, and I may be able to find that and send it on, and it might be something for additional consideration at some point in the communication, whether it's some of the things we're talking to adults and talking to students that oftentimes aren't included in things, and if somebody looks down, talk to them and find out what's going on. So, but anyway, my compliments. Also, I would echo Dr. Nian's comments with regard to the Chain Exploration Center. Congratulations. The grant went down last Friday and was successfully delivered.
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Delivered, successfully hand-delivered.
Yeah.
With that, we'll move on to board monitoring.
Sort of slide. Wait, it's this one right here. That would be this one.
Thank you. If it goes the wrong way, then it's another one.
So, well, good evening, everyone. I'm here with one of my special education teachers, Michelle Drangus. She is our newest special ed teacher to the department, and she works with our 4-year-old kindergarten program and our 4-year-olds. So tonight we want to talk about the expansion of disproportionality in special education and our early intervention services through the pyramid model.
I just pointed at me.
So the federal government mandates that the state collects data in different categories, and then they're responsible to report that information to each of the school districts. And most recently, we received information on 2 of our 14 indicators, and there's information regarding the percentage of districts with disproportionate representation of racial and ethnic groups. So the first indicator 9 is the identification of how many students are identified of the ethnic and racial groups are identified as special education. And indicator 10 breaks that down into the specific special education categories. The goal of this information is to improve quality of education for all students, statewide address the disproportionate number of students of color referred and placed in special education, and then to address disproportionality as an educational issue, not just a special education issue.
Maureen, can we ask questions as you go along? So can you just give us the definition from your perspective of what disproportionality means?
Sure. When you take in a large population, so, okay, are we lopsided? Is there a balance of, and it's a weighted balance of, are we identifying too many students in a different category or race. So I'm going to show a slide right now that might answer that question. Okay? See, this tells it all.
Well, now it's perfectly clear. I get it.
Okay, so when I talk about indicator, and I'm going to explain this information to you. Oh.
What are you trying to do? I'm trying to read
I
your
wanted
mind.
to like
Use
use my
pointer.
little pointer
Okay.
here. That's this top one, right? Okay. Well, if we take a look at all disabilities at the very top, that first column up there, are you following me? You also have it in front of you as well. Okay, this is, thank you, this is indicator 9. Okay, and this is taking all students with disabilities starting in the years 2014-15 through the school year of 2016-17. And it breaks it down into the ethnic and racial groups of Hispanic or Latino, American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Native Hawaiian or other public islander, white, and then 2 or more races. So then, if we move back to right under Hispanic Latino, you'll see public. So for each of those years, it identifies how many Hispanic or Latino students we've had in our district throughout the years. Okay? The next categories is W/DIS. Those are how many of the students within those 3 years were in that ethnic group were identified as students with disabilities. The next category identifies the risk factor, and that tells us, like, are we balanced with our numbers, or are we disproportionate? Are we off? Are we identifying too many students in that ethnic group with a disability? Okay, and that is how that is calculated is the students with disability is divided by the total number of students identified in that group. So let's take a look at the Hispanic or Latino. So our 18 students divided by the 93 total students multiplied by 100. But because Waupaca doesn't have a large population in each of our areas, that risk factor is kind of skewed. So the Wisconsin Department of Education really takes a look at that white category, and that is the weighted risk. So we're comparing our numbers to the rest of the state. And so that's what we want to take a look at. So taking a look at all of that information in that first section up there, how are we doing? And the state of Wisconsin says, hey, we're doing a good job there. Okay, we're not disproportionate with our special education students being over-identified in any ethnic or racial group. Okay? And we know that by going to the very bottom of your sheet, and you can see the criteria here, this is the criteria that we use, that the state uses to identify whether or not your district is disproportionate. So first of all, they take a look at least 100 students enrolled in a racial group. We don't have that many here in Waupaca. They look at least 10 students with disabilities for racial groups. We don't have that. And then the weighted risk ratio of 2 or greater for the racial groups. And the risk for racial group exceeds the state's risk level for white students by 1%. We don't meet that criteria. And then you have to meet each of those criteria for 3 consecutive years. So we don't, we're good. So now we're moving on to indicator 10. Indicator 10 starts with, under all disabilities, starts with autism. And now what we're doing in indicator 10 is breaking down the disabilities into each category. Intellectual disabilities, emotional behavior disabilities, specific learning disabilities, other health impairment, and speech or language impairment. Then what I did, I just took where you see the yellow is what I identified. Again, the state is saying, Waupaca, you're okay. You know, we're not concerned about you. But as a special ed director, student service director, I am concerned in some of our areas, as is Dr. Negan. And so I highlighted those areas for us to take a look at tonight. And we're just going to focus on those areas because there's a lot of data here. And I know that we have X amount of time for this. So just take a look at the emotional behavior disorders. If you take a look at under Hispanic or Latino, you'll notice that each year we increased a point in identification of students with emotional disabilities for students that are identified also as Hispanic or Latino. So that's a high risk. We're continuously identifying more and more students of that ethnicity as having an emotional behavioral disorder. So we have to take a look at that, and if we move across the screen following that emotional behavioral disorders, all the way to the opposite end, you'll notice that we are having an increase as well in 2 or more races. So I'm assuming it's the Hispanic, Latino, and another race, the combined races, that we're having an increase there. Now, we know that the Hispanic or Latino population is increasing throughout the United States. And Wisconsin is expected to see a very significant increase in this ethnic group within the next 10 years. And within the next couple of years, we're going to be seeing a significant increase in our elementary, at our elementary level. So we really have to pay attention to this ethnic group and how we are providing interventions, how are we delivering our services before identifying them in special education, how are we supporting them, and are we responding appropriately, are we culturally responsive to the behaviors. So there's some socially emotional studies that we really have to be taking a look and digging into this as a district.
Marie, does this chart or does your study, other than looking at ethnic groupings, does it look at any other major factors such as socioeconomic backgrounds?
Not yet, but we will, not at this point. This one is just looking at special education. Okay?
Something that you, if I may, something that you said a few moments ago with regard to the category on the far right, 2 or more races. Are the individuals that are captured there also displayed in one of the columns prior to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So then moving down into specific learning disabilities, it's not as significant in the increase, but there is we're seeing an increase in students identified that are Hispanic or Latino. And again, we have to take a step back and really take a look at what kinds of interventions do we have in place for this ethnic group. Are our interventions most culturally responsive to them? So those are some questions that I have, and then I will be pursuing those in the future. Another area that I'd like us to take a look at is our Asian population in regards to speech and language impairment. It's just kind of all over the board there. And it's great that our the 2016-17 number is significantly lower than the previous 2 years. But that is an area that I want to make sure that we are identifying, we are making sure that we have interventions in place for our Asian population, that we are providing that English language learner support for them, and making sure that we have those early interventions in place prior to identifying them as having a speech and language impairment. And then another area it's not as concerning, but I didn't really like the numbers there, for the speech and language impairment is our Black and African American. So just kind of, watch on in that ethnic group. And then the last area that I highlighted is up in the white, if we move across at the very top to white, going down to the autism, we have been identifying more and more an increase in students that are white in that area. And my question has been recently to the special education department, and we're reaching out to the principals, is what interventions are we really putting in place prior to these identifications? So a lot is taking a real good look at what interventions are we using in general education.
Now, Marie, you mentioned that one of the things that you try to capture here is to do some kind of comparison on a statewide basis, or at least some other schools that might be of
The
similar.
weighted risk, okay, that is how we compare to other districts.
Okay, and so from your just overall kind of the big picture trending wise, some of the numbers you pointed out, is that pretty typical? Like autism, for instance, is that similar in other districts, would you say?
From some of the statistics that I have been seeing, there has been an increase statewide in that. I haven't taken a real close look.
So for us to have a somewhat of an increase would not be atypical?
Correct.
Yeah.
With most,
It strikes me that this could be a matter of scoring and attribution. I mean, are the white students, when they have behavioral problems and learning problems, are we blaming it on something that is genetic and beyond their control and calling it autism, whereas these other students were saying, no, they've got behavior problems, and blaming them is what I'm getting at.
Right. I certainly hope not, but again, we really have to take a look at the emotional behavior of the disabilities, the identification there, and how are we responding to students in different ethnic groups, and are we responding appropriately? So I haven't given.
I'm just saying that I think we need to be very diligent in how this information is being captured and maybe question it a bit.
And that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
with most of the categories on weighted risk that you've highlighted, there is a progressional increase. Under the speech or language impairment, it's not actually a progression like in the others, and it's on a very low sample, and I'm not saying we don't keep watch on that, but why did you highlight those?
Because it just, to me, there was just, because we had like in the Asian, it was just a little higher. It was over that 2 in at least 1 year, and it's just, I think they're a lot more like a watch to me. And I'm getting kind of critical here with our
And that's fine.
information, but
We'd
I'd rather be a little
rather
more.
capture, we'd obviously rather capture things.
Yeah.
And intervene, being cautious rather than missing something, but I was just curious.
Yeah.
Is speech and language impairment different than English as a second language?
Yeah, speech and language impairment is, there's 2 different identifications. One is just the articulation, how the child pronounces the sounds and formulates the words. So it's a lot of the mouth and muscles of the mouth and the tongue and creating those sounds in the voice. Stuttering is another area that they look at. And then there's a category of vocabulary and understanding our language, knowing what words are, using those words, retrieving those words, and their oral expression, being able to communicate using words, as well as understanding what's being communicated. And sometimes it's hard when you have a student whose English is a second language. So when we have students that are students with a second with English as a second language, what we need to do is to bring in somebody of their language to assess them in their native language, to identify whether or not they actually have a speech or language impairment, so that we're not assuming that they just don't know, they just don't understand language.
Maureen, if we have a student who might be in a wheelchair, for instance, and has had a congenital concern since birth, but have been in a wheelchair virtually all the time, but other than that don't exhibit any kind of concerns, do they even show up on this sheet?
No.
No. So they don't become other health impairment?
Not unless it's they're having a difficult time accessing their education.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. We'll move on to the next slide. So here's a couple next steps. I talked about some of the next steps that I'm going to be doing with this information. And other ones, it's very important that I have conversations with the building principals to talk about this information and present it to the staff so we can have some conversations about this. And then we'll review expansion of disproportionality through a collection of Title I. You know, how does this compare? Are we over-identifying students in Title I as well? Taking a look at our multi-tiered system and looking at our behaviors as well. And then not only just looking at ethnic groups, but then our genders as well. And just overall, if we take a look at how we're servicing students, are we being biased at all in any of the ways that we service them or provide them opportunities? We will be focusing on executing culturally responsive practices so that we are not over-identifying any students. And then we are always continuously trying to implement early interventions so that we are providing equal opportunities for all students. And that's why I have Michelle here tonight, because our newest intervention that we have implemented this year is the pyramid model, which it provides social and emotional support to all students at our early childhood 3-year-old program, as well as our LK students.
All right. As Maureen stated, my name is Michelle Drinkus. I am an early childhood special education teacher at the WLC in a co-taught classroom. I had implemented the pyramid model in a previous district for many years, so I have a pretty good understanding, and I'd like to share that with all of you tonight. The pyramid model for social emotional competence is a framework of supports and strategies for children, educators, and families. And I think we have always done social emotional supports within our classrooms for the children, and we've done trainings for teachers. I think the family aspect has been missing, so that's something we're very excited to start bringing into the pyramid model. As Maureen stated, it does provide a base social emotional program for all students, all children in our programs. And studies have proven that it does reduce challenging programs. And there is a very high expulsion rate for preschool students, and it was very surprising when I had heard this too. And then some of those programs that had a high expulsion rate started implementing the pyramid model practices, and they did see significant decreases in challenging behaviors and definitely decreased the expulsions. This is what the, yes?
Before you go on, is there a way to turn this fan off by any chance? That I think there's, whether it's over there or maybe on your phone. Thank you.
All right. This is what the pyramid model looks like. The pyramid model is essentially PBIS, but for preschool. It's just kind of simplified and brought to the lower level where our children ages, and it actually starts at birth, through the birth to 3 programs, through child care centers, and moves up into the preschool age. And technically it we're working on involving kindergarten in this as well. They're starting to do a couple of the pyramid model practices. The base is the yellow, and that's promotion. And the first thing we need to have is an effective workforce. All the 4K teachers and assistants and other staff members who are involved with the pyramid model did take a survey after going through a training series. And the survey came back with 100% that everyone was willing and ready to move forth with the pyramid model. So once you have that staff buy-in, the rest, they're ready to put into work. We're gonna get it moving. The blue part is for all children, and the pyramid model trainers always refer to this as the water. Everybody needs water, and you can't sustain unless you have water. And this is what I think a lot of programs have been missing in the past. They only gave those social emotional supports for certain children they felt maybe needed them. So it's nice that we have those high quality supportive environments, the nurturing and responsive relationships we build with the families and the children. And the next category is the green, and that is the children who are at risk. And in this category, our pyramid model trainers always refer to this as the broccoli. It's good for some. Everybody doesn't really need it, but it can be beneficial to some that really need it. And those are targeted social and emotional supports. We're getting it a little more specific, and those will reach a fewer number of students. The top of the pyramid is the smallest portion, and that is for children with persistent challenging behaviors. Some students in this category do have IEPs in place already, so they already have a lot of those targeted behavior supports in place, but there's a lot of children in our programs that do have those challenging, persistent behaviors that we can now focus more on in maybe small group lessons or individual one-on-one social emotional training. And that is referred to as the medicine. You just need it sometimes, just a little bit, and then we can hopefully move on and make some changes so they can move down into at-risk and hopefully decrease to generalized teachings. Waupaca pyramid model teaches the expectations of how to be respectful, responsible, prepared, and safe in the environments throughout the school day. Now this is taken from the Waupaca way, which the whole school district has been utilizing. Now lessons included in this are aren't limited to the rules and routines, self-regulation, feelings, emotions, and problem-solving strategies. And we had to make it a little friendly so our students would understand it by putting a cute little comment there and just to describe it so our students, because visuals are very important so they can understand. So we made a cute little comment mascot there. What happened was all of our schools have a matrix that on the left side covers respectful. We did for pyramid model put responsible and prepared into one category just because 2 or 3 is what pyramid model recommends for expectations for our students, and we thought those 2 could kind of fit in the same category for the understanding and developmental level of our 3 and 4-year-olds, and then being safe. What we did is we looked at the matrices that were in place at the chain and the WLC. Our other child care centers that do have 4K sites in them did not have anything at all. So the 4K teachers all went together. We worked off of those and worked off of other sample matrices we had. And we simplified and made it more useful for our students. And this will also be sent out to parents next fall when school starts. So they'll have a nice understanding of socially, emotionally what we're looking at for our 4K and 3-year-old students. One thing that is important with the matrix is that it applies to students, but it also applies to staff. If we're asking students to do these things, the staff need to understand that they need to do them because our students learn through modeling. Also, we had to make it developmentally appropriate. If we tell our students in the hallway, oh, 0 level, some of our students don't know numbers, they don't know what that means. So we've paired animals with our voice levels, and I'll show you a little slide on that in a little bit. We need to make sure it has a shared focus for the continuity of the program, the school, and then the classroom. So because it's very similar to what the other elementary schools have in place, this will definitely mesh well when they move into the upper grades. It's just worded a little different, but it has the same meaning in the categories, with the exception of responsible and prepared are separated from kindergarten level up. It does positively state what we would like. Preschool students, a lot of times here, no, don't. So no running, we say use your walking feet. So state it positive, because some of our students with their language development at that time, they don't hear the first part of what you're saying, they hear the second part. Like, don't run, they hear run, so they're gonna run. But if we say walking feet, they're hearing that. We have to make sure it's general enough for all settings, but then we can, you can see, we broke it down into the different categories to make it specific for the different environments. I want to just touch base on the voice choice. Just an example of something we have implemented this year. Our 4K teachers and their assistants and other staff who work with our preschool students were just trained in this year. So when semester started, we implemented the voice choice. Again, we've practiced this through songs. We have, we call them our Comet Way lessons, or Waupaca Way lessons. Songs, stories, modeling, acting it out. Our students get it. It's working in the hallways. We say fish voice, everyone has their mouth closed in the hallway. Walking down our halls, I think our 4K students, honestly, are probably the quietest ones you'll see in the whole school. It's pretty neat to see, and we've seen a lot of success. We met with the 4K teachers 2 weeks ago, and I had asked how it was going, and everybody loves it. And it's also being very helpful because the child care centers that our 4K programs are in, they're going to use it with their younger kids they have there too. So it's going to be throughout the entire centers, and then it'll grow with them. And we did pair numbers with the words with the picture, so it can grow with them, so when they transition into the upper grades, they'll remember that. And our kindergarten teachers at WLC have started using this too.
Michelle, I'd also like to share that our cabinet members have started using this too. This morning, they asked me to use my fish voice. So I took great umbrage to that.
I'm glad it's working.
Well, we don't know.
Or did it, yes.
It's a request.
And I have a picture, the one on the top left with the two little girls there. That is pyramid model in action. The students were playing in our little construction area, and someone had something they wanted. Now, typically, a 4-year-old would run and tell the teacher, or maybe even just take it away. They went over to the wall, and they grabbed, what is on that paint stick there are some of our solution cards, which is part of the pyramid model, which we teach our students. They went and grabbed the solution cards on their own, and they started going through them, seeing which one they should use. And they found the picture that said, or please share. So then they took that picture off, and they went to the student who had something they wanted, and they said, can you share that with us? And he said yes, and all was good. They put the solution cards away. And I've already seen a huge change from the beginning of the school year when they came to the teachers for everything, and now they're starting to do more on their own. Cooperatively working together is the bottom picture. That was just during the fitness unit, spinning the exercise wheel of fun, we called it. They were taking turns, they understood my turn, your turn, and again, that is on one of the solution cards too. The bottom right corner is an example of, we have kind of calming places. This is the Calm Down Castle. It has different sensory supports in there, different breathing techniques, different pictures of things that the students have been taught for calming or relaxing if they just need that break. Sometimes they just need a break and they don't know how to explain it to us, and the students just need somewhere to go. This is somewhere they can go. And you kind of see in the corner how we also did a lot with feelings, and they're very good at recognizing feelings. Now our next step is full program implementation, and that will start next fall. We're looking at not just focusing on the voice choice. We're going to focus on, we have specific Waupaca Way lessons that actually For example, we want students to walk in line. We say, okay, get in a line. Oh, that you're out of line, get in this line. We never explain to them what a line is, why you need to be in the line, and how to do it. Our lesson specifically states, oh, we need to be in a line so we can stay safe. We need to be in a line so, and this is what it looks like, your feet and your hands. So it gets very specific in how we teach it, and then we'll practice that, and we'll go through that with all the items on the matrix. And our hopes are to cover all of that within the first month of school. We're very hopeful we can get it done in that time. Also, we're going to start focusing on family involvement. That'll be a little later next year. We will start having the teachers put what they're teaching in social emotional development in their newsletters they send out. Doing more family programs where we invite families in. We're going to wait a little bit more until the 4K teachers have a little more training in pyramid model and a little more fluid in it, so that they have really a full understanding so they can help the parents. And the next thing we're implementing in the fall is a 4K specific behavior reporting system, which is going to be different than majors and minors that I guess they do in elementary, middle, and high school. These are little reporting things just to track behavior, because we're always doing things to help our students. Nothing's ever documented. If we have a student who's always, say, making mouth noises and not stopping, well, we want it documented in our behavior reporting system. We want to know what strategies we use, the time of day, the situation in which it occurs, and we need to find out, well, is there something we can do within that area? Are there trends? And then we can try to pinpoint what's happening, where is it happening, and hopefully put interventions in place to decrease or eliminate those behaviors. So we are going to work on training the teachers in that in April, with full implementation really of that, with another training hopefully either in the summer with staff development or early fall to get that going. So, any questions? All right.
Sounds like a great program.
It is very successful in the district I previously worked in. We had implemented for 4 years before I left, and we definitely saw really nice changes within the programs and with the students.
And
So,
I bet the 5K teachers really, it helps them.
They love the voices.
Yeah.
I have to tell you.
But the children are already prepared by the time
Yes.
they get to
Yeah. I think we're going to see the biggest changes, not this next coming year, but the year after we do full implementation. I think that's when we'll see, because right now we don't have a lot of universal things going on between the different 4K sites, except for the voice choice at this point. So next year with full implementation, the sites will all be on board, and the year after that, I think is when we're going to really start seeing some nice differences within our kindergarten classrooms.
following up on Betty's question a little bit, or comment, when this is just 4K,
And our 3-year-old special education students.
so when they move into kindergarten, five-year-olds, is there something of a similar nature that sort of kicks in then, or?
The PBIS kicks in.
Okay.
And I've also, I attended one of our PBIS elementary meetings and explained what the pyramid model is. And there was talk of me joining the PBIS committee in the school to just have more communication between what we're doing and what they're doing, and see if there's other things that we can work together with.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to section 8 of the agenda, reports on meetings attended. Do we have anyone that wishes to submit a report?
I do. As at the last meeting I mentioned, but I went to the School Board Association Legal and Human Resources Conference down in the Dells on February 22nd. I went to several seminars. I'm not going to bore you with all the information, which I have tons of here that they always give, as you well know. I'll leave that with the superintendent, and he can file it somewhere if he wants to. But a few takeaways. This is for board members. I mean, it was directed for school boards, and these were some of the takeaways. I went to a conference on holistic approach to well-being, comprehensive approach to safety and engagement, and one on harassment and discrimination and non-renewals. all pretty hot topics, as we well know. Here are a few things on the harassment aspect, which we read about all the time, but of course school boards have to be pretty cognizant of the rules and regs there. It's imperative that we know the difference, and I don't mean every person, but as a district, we know the difference between what might be unlawful and what is acceptable, unacceptable, or unwelcome practice. Those are two different things. What the law says is one thing, and what is acceptable or unacceptable is another. It gets to be a pretty gray, sticky area, but that's really where the discussion is right now. And along those lines, it's a very fluid situation because the presenters gave a lot of examples of what might have been acceptable in the 1990s and the early 2000s are no longer acceptable today, especially with older staff who tend to do things as maybe was acceptable in 1990, but today that would be seen in a different light. So we just have to kind of be aware of that. It was very interesting, but it's a tough topic to talk about without kind of feeling just a little bit uneasy. Okay, Title IX, a lot of discussion about Title IX is because it protects harassment. We have to be aware that gender identity of students and those who, Title IX protects those who against those who don't accept the student's wishes, because the student's wishes are what we should be concerned with, and if we don't follow, then we may be in violation. Okay, and there's a lot of discussion about that in the public, as you well know. If we do have any kinds of allegations that come forth as a board, we should take prompt steps. That was a key concept, because sometimes school districts will have a problem with somebody who may be a senior and say, well, they're graduating, so the problem's going to go away. That's really not the best approach to take, but some districts have tried to do that, but we were cautioned that if we do have an allegation, we should look into it in a prompt manner. And finally, in this area, our Title IX coordinator needs to stay current with the law and the court case changes, because there have been quite a few. Which begs the question, and I'm going to just ask Greg again, who is our Title IX coordinator?
That would be Marco.
Marie, okay. So just, they're just reiterating what you already know, but I'm picking these things up. The other aspect of what I was, two of the other three strands and discussions that I went to had to do with the holistic approach and combining with sort of district well-being. A couple of things, and Carl, I'm sure, is aware of this. They talked a lot about wellness programs and the holistic approach to staff as well as students. A couple of things. 50%, I found this fascinating, 50% of all of our health costs are based on behaviors. And they pointed out they're based on behaviors: drinking, eating, exercising or lack of, financial stress, etc., cause 50% of the healthcare costs right now. Okay, it just seemed to me unbelievable, but the more you think about it, it makes sense. Not to say that we haven't addressed it, because in our community conversation with the whole mental health, we are trying to address it, which is great, and they talked about that. Speaking of which, they did point out that more and more teachers are leaving the profession in terms of conversations and outgoing teachers because of stress, and much of that stress is on their financial picture. We keep hearing about students who come in with huge debts, et cetera, or have them coming out of colleges. The financial stress is very real, and a lot of students are moving on because they can't meet those financial stress, and they don't see themselves as making enough money to ever do that. That's become a real problem. It was commented that if you want to attract a diverse workforce, which I think most people or most districts do, we then need to provide a diverse well-being approach. For example, if we're talking about just in a physical sense, we can't open a weight room, for instance, in the high school has a nice weight room here. They talked about that would be nice to open up and say, hey, we have a weight room, people can come in and use it, whatever. But if 95% of the staff haven't been trained on how to use the equipment, it doesn't do you much good. We can say those things, but you have to be able to utilize it in the way that it's supposed to be. Because, as they point out, maybe 50% of your staff, especially new staff, would rather do yoga classes. So kind of pointing out that we have to be cognizant of the changes that are out there. They stressed collaboration, offering reduced memberships to municipal swimming pools, gyms, workout areas, and have instructors, and also maybe utilizing, a lot of districts do, utilizing your recreation programs, your municipal ones, and bringing them into your schools. Instead of having the kids go to the recreation programs, having part of them brought into the school. Dinners at night, movies, instructional classes, all of that could be used perhaps inside the school district as well. And then food service, they talked a lot about how food and diet, of course, needs to be on board with any new and innovative approaches, which sort of begs the question, and you mentioned it earlier, Greg, that we're kind of in this month where we're talking a little bit about food service, and Chartwell, our food service. And I wrote down here, will we be receiving from them kind of an annual report? Do we get?
At the end of the year.
At the end of the year. They can kind of give us an idea after, because this is the end of their first year, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, and kind of how it's going and what they see are trendy and all that sort of thing. And they also suggested that we have a wellness committee, which we have a very active wellness committee, a wonderful wellness committee here. But it's recommended that a board member be on that wellness committee for better communication or good communication, keep on, and that person doesn't necessarily need to be a volunteer from the board, but could be somebody appointed by the board. And also, my idea would be if you attend those meetings, it would be just like any board meeting and you'd get paid to do so. They thought that was very important in every district. So, and I know, Sandy, you've been involved with the wellness, at least early on.
Yes.
But it would be nice to have somebody who would be on that committee on a regular basis and then could report back to us on a regular basis. That's what they were suggesting. So those are all the things I came away with, for better or for worse.
Thank you. Okay. Any other meetings that anyone wishes to report tonight? Okay, we'll move on to school visits. You've spent your entire time in the charter school in the last how many months?
In the little room.
Anyone at this point? Steve?
I had the pleasure of visiting all schools except the chain this month. I went to the middle school first and chatted with Carl, and we reminisced for a lot of things. And I talked to 15 different teachers in there while I was there. It just happened that way. But my favorite was Tricia Duman's class, and she was doing a quiz on what are properties of matter. I went in thinking I was smarter than a 5th grader, and I came out in a hurry.
Are you going to give us a quiz, Steve?
I could give you a quiz, I got it here, but I don't think I want to, because I don't want to find out what you don't know.
Not with the camera going.
Yeah, especially. But it was a very good visit, and I would like to go back again. That was fun.
Very good, thank you.
Dimitri, do you have anything?
Nothing formal. I mean, I've
Okay.
been to Waupaca Learning Center just about every day this year because my daughter goes there. And I'm always very impressed with the students and how well behaved they are, and the affection of the teachers and the way that the students treat each other, the maintenance staff. It's just it's a wonderful facility. It's nice to see the chain school, charter school project coming together, but I'm in no hurry to encourage my daughter to leave Waupaca Learning Center because it's a great school. Yeah.
Very good.
Okay, well, I went out and visited the chain. I think I read, or we listened long enough to how wonderful the chain school, charter school is coming along, and it is. So I wanted to get a sense of the physicalness of it. So I went out, and Rhonda Hare gave me a wonderful tour so that I could see for myself kind of where rooms are going to be, where doorways are going to be put in, all of that sort of thing. And it was really, really wonderful. There are a lot of physical changes, some of them somewhat minor, like just opening a door here or taking out a part of a wall here to make room for the concept that's being built into the charter school. Even looking at the future, the rooms that may eventually house 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. I mean, that's already sort of down the road as a possibility there. We also looked at the plans for outdoor facilities there in terms of gardening, places where there might be small housing for animals, you know, the waterfront area. There's a lot of aspects to that, which is being developed as we kind of move into that. And I'm sure I don't have to tell most of the people involved in that. But to everybody who hasn't been involved with it, it's a great project, and looking forward to it. I also want to just mention that I was in Mary Kay Risto's room visiting with Rhonda, and Mary Kay, who's going to be a member of the staff next year there, and her second graders, I think they're second graders, were out getting something, and so they started filtering back into the room. And for those of you who know Mary Kay, she's been in our district for, you know, a good quarter century or better, but one of the students came in and said to Mrs. Risto, "Mrs. Risto, is this your dad?" So I made her feel really good, I'm sure. And so anyway, I told her I could be. But we had a real nice talk. So anyway, I do want to also just plug, because I went to Monica Reeves' play last week, which she put on here at the high school, for those who didn't get a chance to see it. Called Anatomy of Grey. It was wonderful, and a shout out to her and her staff, Amy Mead, Mark Oddie, and Michael Etzweiler, all her assistant, all did a great job. Wonderful performance. So.
Very good. Okay, we'll move on to upcoming meetings.
Yes, April 4th will be the election canvass. April 10th is our regularly scheduled board meeting at 5:15. April 26th is the one-year reunion of our community conversation. Hashtag Waupaca2K30.
Okay. And that moves us on to section D of part 8, which is the administrator section. First item there is the review of the transportation services RFP.
So I'm going to turn it over to Carl here in just a moment, but first I'll say that I did take the memo that Carl provided to the board, and I included some information that you'll find there in the background section about what an RFP is and what it must be, and that's just for our viewing audience who may not be present for these conversations, so that they are able to understand what a request for proposal really is. So with that, I'll turn it over to Carl.
I think before you is a RFP. It's 69 pages, and the table of contents, it really explains it all. This is the third RFP I've done in my career for transportation services, and what this really does, it gives an opportunity for the district to authorize just seeking whether or not the market would reveal some cost savings going forward. Whether it would or not, that remains to be seen. And it's a legally vetted document. It'll be really for a review. If we look at the charter contract, didn't have you go through the 100 pages of that one for all the verbiage, so to speak. And the RFP document is truly just to provide transparency to the Board of Education of how this timeline and this process will work. It enables the board really to see how this whole process will manifest. And in the end, if a contract or a vendor is indeed chosen, what will happen is that in the timeline, there's an opportunity to, as we analyze the bids, you can see in the contract, it also states that the RFP process, it states that the board can reject all these bids. They're not obligated to take the lowest bid. Because what happens is when we get down to the final analysis, if indeed there are 2 vendors or 3 vendors that are vetted, It will come to this Board of Education, and the Board of Education will interview those candidates. I'll probably have a set questions that I'll give to the board. I will direct at the vendors that are in play, and then during that time period, the Board of Education can have basically a free-for-all asking any question, but I'll keep the objectivity to the process of me asking the same question to every candidate, just as we do in a job interview. So in that process, the board can get a real feel of what they want or do not want. And in the end, if indeed the board would choose one particular candidate to be the vendor of the district, then they still, within the RFP process, have an opportunity to negotiate certain items that they want in the contract. In the RFP process, you'll see that all the data is here. There's the contract specifications, which is a real legal document, specified everything that everybody has to adhere to. There's supplemental information, so they can have comparable bid opportunities. There's a transportation bid calendar with specific timelines, inclusive in those timelines if the board indeed we go forward. This RFP will be sent out to prospective bidders. There's a bid list in here already, but it'll also go in the newspapers. We believe if anybody else wants to bid on this process, any vendor. So it's wide open to the market. There's all the routes of the district current routes, all the extracurricular, all the athletic routes. What's that costing mechanism? There's our 5-year worth of expenditures in this document. There's our audited transportation expenditures. There's our current salary and transportation staff salary and benefits without names. And district boundary map, our current fleet, which is written into the first year of the proposal that they would purchase that fleet, not to be part of the 5-year analysis. There's cost escalator. There's a fuel cost is their own. So that is inclusive in the bid. So basically, they can't come back in the 5th year and say, well, fuel costs went up 50%, so you're going to pay 50% more. No, this is a 5-year bid. Each year is defined what they're going to bid for each fiscal year. So in all the district, school board policies that relate to transportation service are inclusive too, and that's why the document is so big. So what will happen is the RFP would go out the 15th in 2 days. We'll tweak it if there's any I've noticed in the first page there's a few grammatical errors such as the time, start and end time. Perhaps a county mishap from RFP. I saw that in there, so I apologize for that. But all in all, that when this process, the bidders all come to a collective meeting during this process. They'll have one time to have a free-for-all and ask Lee and I any questions they possibly can. The answers won't be given to them verbally probably at that time. We'll take notes, and everybody in the bid packet will be given the same answers going forward. And then it's really up to them to come to the table and see what basically costs they have. And the board can reject it all in the very end, up to the very end. It's in the board's court. And inclusive in the packet is if somebody submits a proposal that is they cannot honor, they have to pay us $25,000 just because of the time and effort that we went through. So they have, every vendor needs to put a bid bond into this to solidify they're really in this. So this is really the beginning of the process. There's nothing absolute about this at this point, but it's really an opportunity to see how the market will transpire, and if you're not happy with the proposals of wages or salaries or something in that, when we get down, you'll see what they show us, and we can have an opportunity then to still be in the driver's seat, so to speak. That was pretty funny, actually. So that's what I have before you this evening.
Carl, in reality, how many vendors do you think would respond?
Well, everybody on this list, and I lost track, but at least 10.
And you think all 10 of them will respond?
Yes, probably be more. I'm guessing 12.
Okay. So it will, in fact, be competitive.
Yes.
From that sense. Okay.
Okay, everybody's had this document to review. Any questions? Carl, you said it had been vetted by legal.
Yes.
Who was
It's been
utilized?
vetted by Eileen Brownlee out of Fenimore. She's won numerous awards for the best attorney in the state of Wisconsin. She vetted it a few years back. I had her check it out for free, and it's a continuance. So she's.
So this in essence is off of what was drafted a couple years ago?
Yes, and tweaked
And then
this
she
year.
checked for updates
Correct.
that might be required.
And it also was checked by our insurance company in three
Okay.
for the insurance implications, just within the last week.
And any input from them?
No, they said the contract was fine.
Carl, your timeline is such that April 5th, you'll be receiving back up here your last date. Can you give us an idea, because I'm just thinking ahead a little bit, if we are going to go through a process of interviewing, so to speak, what kind of dates do we have to sort of keep in mind that might be happening?
On
What
page
time?
page 16, I think, of this document shows the timeline.
Oh, does it have the dates in there? Okay. School board decision must be made by May 8th. Interviews.
Page 16 is the actual page number is the bottom.
At the bottom, yes. There it is. Right there.
Okay, yeah, that's good, thank you. Okay.
So really, it's tonight, the 15th, the RFP process would go out. March 29th, the pre-bidders meeting, so everybody could gather more information if they had confusion or any questions to this regard. April 5th, all the bids will be due by 1 p.m. I think the bid opening is 1:15, about 15 minutes later. Actually, at that time, just like when we do the athletic complex, a multitude of those vendors will want to be at that bid opening to see how that transpired. April 11th through 12th, in that time period, I'll be analyzing all these bids, basically in an Excel spreadsheet format, comparing those costs in a multitude of versions. And then I'll have that all laid out. And then the 23rd and 24th, the evaluation of the bids, basically the review committee, and that would be with the Board of Education during that time frame. It's here or there, depending upon your schedules and your availability to meet.
So we're the review committee?
Yes. And then I'll probably get you to the finalist. I'll review it, and then I'll bring you the combinations from probably on a cost analysis from 1 to 2, or 1 to 12. And then the review committee would probably select the final two, if there were 2 finalists, and then the school board, May 8th, I believe that's a board meeting, would review these bids, and then either they choose a contract vendor or not. And then we go forward, and the time frame is, I've vetted this with at least 6 transportation contractors. It's a tighter time frame, but they can make this happen this year by July 1st.
Other questions? Okay, again, this does not commit us to necessarily outsourcing the transportation. It gives us the opportunity to review what the possibilities might be and the costs associated therewith. Do we need a motion on this?
I move approval of the RFP as presented.
Motion to approve the RFP as presented, if I may. He did say there were some typos in it.
Oh, so with the caveat that the typos.
Okay.
Second.
Motion to approve and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is revision of policy code 345.6, graduation requirements.
This is a very short item. As part of 2017 Wisconsin Act 59, the minimum passing score on the civics test was increased from 60 out of 100 to 65. So we are looking for an update to policy code 345.6. That is the only change to the policy, changing the required number of correct from 60 to 65.
Okay. Motion to approve the change in policy 345.6, increasing the score from 60 to 65 on the civics test. The motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion?
Can I just ask, maybe Mark can answer this, how are these tests given now that we've had them for a year or two? Do you know what the process?
In the classroom, maybe I'm not 100% sure of your question.
Well, I mean, the students need to take them, so how are they taking them? When and how, I guess? They don't take them all as one large group, they do them individually by
Correct.
class?
Correct. They're being infused into the 9th grade social studies or 10th grade social studies curriculum and taken as if you would take an end of Unit 3 assessment, but they're not necessarily going in towards a student's grade because it's meeting a graduation requirement.
And they can they can take them at any level, I mean, any grade level, 9 through 12?
Correct. And as many times as you need to. And
right.
So for the students that weren't successful the first time around, they've been communicated to or didn't score 65 or greater, they've been communicated to, and arrangements have been made for them to come in to take it at a different time.
Do they take it online?
Right now it's pen and paper. They could take it online, or we could get it into Infinite Campus as an assessment, but right now it's just, we have, the teachers have created it that follows the expectations, and so it's just as easy for them to do it that way.
And do the districts have the ability to raise that minimum requirement, don't they?
Yes, but the thing to remember is that there's really no requirements by the DPI in terms of how we deliver it. We could deliver it open book to students if we choose to do that. So it's one of those it's really wide open for however we want to do that. It's just a graduation requirement.
And it currently is open book, is it not?
I don't think that's actually a question. I don't think so.
How many teachers do we have currently teaching civics?
Well, there's 5 teachers in the social studies department currently.
What are their names?
What are their names?
Yeah.
Well, we have Maggie Blonzak, we have Corey Nagel, we have Jill Jansen, we have Lisa Simonson, and Jesse Bernhagen.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay. Not that it is required in order to vote on this motion, but has anybody gone online and taken it themselves?
No.
You can do that. Yes, I have. With
that,
you can.
Is it on the DPI website?
No, you just, I mean, there are
Google
multiple
immigration
sources.
test.
There are
You can just Google the immigration test and you'll find it pretty
there are multiple sources.
Did
that
you
can
pass?
do. Yes, I passed.
Open book?
Since it was, well, yes, it was on my computer. All I had to do was minimize and Google.
Oh, dear.
Okay, there is a motion and second, and perhaps more discussion than was necessary. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Who's assigned to the JV2 freshman baseball request?
Carl, would you like to address this one, or?
Yeah, a few years ago, we had a freshman baseball, JV2 baseball team, and then the numbers dropped for a number of years. And then last year, we brought it up, and we usually go for about 3 years to see if it's going to sustain itself or not, and that's why we're requesting the second year now to help finance the JV2 program. The biggest difference, the only difference that we're requesting this year is last year, we had some additional equipment that we could maintain for the JV2 team, so we increased it by $400 to buy game balls and that type of thing for the freshman team.
Carl, is it your recommendation that it remain a 12-game, I see you got 6 and 6, 12-game schedule?
Yeah, I think that would be reasonable enough that we could go with. The varsity and JV teams have 22 games, but 12 would be enough for the freshman JV2 team.
Other questions?
The reason this is coming before the board is because the $4,400, as Carl has pointed out, is not currently in the athletic budget.
Right, and I see you already have coming up here Kyle Douglas. I assume it's going to be the coach if we approve this. Yeah, okay.
Okay, is there a motion?
Oh, I thought there was, I'll make a motion that we approve the JV2, which is the freshman baseball program.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Takes us on to summer school fees.
Jen, did you want to introduce this one?
Sure. As I reported out last month, the summer school fees for K-8 summer school, I would ask the board waive any fees associated with summer school based on courses that are actually run by our school district. So, for example, Fox Valley Tech babysitter course, the hunter safety course, and any other courses by our community partners would remain, the fee would remain because that would go to those partnerships. But fees, for example, for some of the cooking classes and things that we run in-house, I would ask that we waive. The reason for that is it's not that much, as I reported out last month, and with our free and reduced hovering around 40%, I think we might increase summer school participation if we waive the fees.
What are the fees currently?
The fees currently are for the cooking classes. For some of the classes where kids have to purchase materials, there's not many. There's about 7 courses that we actually charge fees for that I would be asking we don't charge those.
And what are the fees?
Between $7 and $5 per person, and even lower than that.
John, are you in the throes of signing up right now for summer school, or hasn't that started?
We are just finishing the touches of the catalog. I was looking for a resolution so I could put this out on the catalog or on the website when we advertise for parents to sign up. We're looking at the first week of April as making the catalog live on the website for parents to sign up.
What is a projected reduction in the amount that had been taken in past years?
Off the top of my head, I'd have to go back to my PowerPoint presentation, but I think it's somewhere around $3,800 in that neck of the woods. The exact amount would be in the PowerPoint in last month's board agenda.
I'll make a motion that we waive any fees associated with our summer school program as it pertains to classes specifically set up by our district.
Second.
Okay. Motion and second. Any other questions? Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Moves us to the next item on the agenda, which is revised via the amendment to the agenda. And that would be the
Number 4.
preliminary notice of non-renewal. I will caution the board that in that there could be items under any kind of preliminary non-renewal that would be considered HR type materials or information and or confidential information, that this is not going to be a debate of any specifics. At this point, it is looking for whether or not there's a motion and or approval to release the preliminary non-renewal. If it is released, then obviously, as is our procedure, it gives the individual the opportunity to request a meeting with the board. Or I should call it a private conference with the board under our policy and state statute. With that, is there a motion?
Yes.
I move to strike Joe Jansen from this list of potential non-renewals. On the grounds he's a year away from retirement, he's been in the district for 20 years. I don't understand.
At this point, I'm not going to entertain specific discussion with regard to reasons that could be bordering on some of the information that the board may have with regard to the reason for the non-renewal, or the preliminary notice, I should say. Okay?
No problem.
I'm providing caution to this board that specific debate or discussion with regard to the actual preliminary notice of non-renewal has to be extremely limited. Okay? This really is something that if we're going to have additional discussion should be under closed session as opposed to open session. And that's in fairness to the rights of everyone involved, to include the Board of Education.
And
So,
Mr. Jansen.
Pardon?
And Mr. Jansen.
Of all involved. We've got 2 items that are here on this item in the agenda. So I'm just cautioning everyone that this is not really the forum for specific debate as such. We can either move forward or not move forward with the preliminary notice of non-renewal. Okay.
How can we move forward on it based on information we haven't been told in closed session yet?
Well, if it is the board's desire to hear this in closed session for more specifics than have previously been received, there are 2 options. One would be to say we are not going to issue the notice, the preliminary notice of non-renewal, and have the administration bring it back to the board again in closed session, or have the release of the preliminary notice of non-renewal, which allows any individual that receives said notice the opportunity to request a private meeting or conference with the board. In one case, it is going back to the administration. That would be if we do not approve the preliminary notice or the release thereof. In the other case, it in essence is not prohibiting that in the long run, but in the short run, it would not be placing anyone that's impacted by this with the opportunity to address the board personally.
Won't they have this opportunity if we wait until after?
Yes, yes, that's what I meant
session?
with shorter versus longer term. It would not
Yeah.
negate their right, because we have specific reasons for those rights to be in place.
So I would.
And I apologize if I'm not wording this well, but I'm trying to be very careful as to how I'm stating it to make sure that the board does not assume some liability that would not be appropriate.
Well, then I guess I would move that we come back into open session after closed session and vote on it then, after we've had a chance to hear the arguments.
Unfortunately, the way that this...
Under state statute, we cannot move this to closed session at this time. That would have to be at a different point.
Okay.
So are you withdrawing your motion for the moment?
No, yes, but I'm going to instead invoke the page 4 of the governance policy manual that says, upon the request of any member, action shall be deferred for 1 meeting. I want to hear more about this before we vote on it.
Delaying for action for 1 meeting, I would look for clarification of whether or not that's delaying it until the next regularly scheduled board meeting. Because if it is that case, then we may be running into some challenges with the statutory requirement for giving notice of non-renewal, should that be the direction proceeded.
I think I can answer that. I don't think we will. as it so happens, when I was down at the last conference, they gave us a booklet on non-renewals from the state School Board Association, requiring that that at least 15 days before giving formal written notice of refusal to non-renew to the last day in April. So backing up from the last day in April would be the 15th. We'll probably meet prior to that.
We probably would, but we also have to allow anyone that might be impacted by this the 5-day allowance from the time that notice is provided to within which they must request.
Correct.
So I haven't counted it out on the calendar.
It's close.
It's very close, and I don't want to jeopardize anyone's rights by cutting it too close. So if you are invoking that portion, I'm looking for clarification. We can set up a special meeting. It doesn't have to be the next regularly scheduled meeting is what I'm trying to get at, perhaps cryptically.
I would like it to be the next regular meeting where our next board member has the opportunity to vote on it.
You know, Dimitri, I would be concerned that I would want anybody receiving a preliminary notice to have as much time as possible to respond and get our response, and then based on our response.
Whether we issue a formal preliminary notice or not, I mean, it's pretty obvious to everyone here that he's on the agenda, that this is his name, he's a target of non-renewal. So we don't have to formally prove it for him to realize that and start preparing whatever he needs to do.
No, I'm not saying that he's in the dark about this. This is posted. I'm just saying that the sooner we get the process in motion, whatever process that's going to be, the more time everybody has to respond and prepare and
Well, I stand by my, I'm invoking the page 4 of the governance policy manual, and I want this to be delayed until our next meeting.
Okay, well, I again ask for clarification. Is it acceptable within what you're invoking for that to be the next meeting that we can schedule on an expedited basis versus the next regular meeting of the board? There's special meetings and there are regular meetings.
I don't have the answer to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
You would not be opposed to there being a special meeting?
I guess I'd like to understand a little bit more the exact timeline, because I would rather have this where our next board member, who's going to be elected by then, will have an opportunity to weigh in on it.
That will present a potential challenge, but
It's a significant issue, and I think it warrants discussion by our next board member.
but he won't be taking office until May, as I understand it.
April 22nd, I believe. It's the fourth Monday in April.
What day in April? I'm sorry.
I believe
Fourth
it's the
Monday.
fourth Monday.
Is there a window of a couple days that we have to have that meeting?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, that's when we have the organizational meeting, when we do, that's when that new board member takes office.
Takes
So
oath.
until then, it's still Steve Shamble. So until like the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, somewhere in there, when we hold the organizational meeting, that's when the new board member takes office, not before.
Well, hold that thought for a second, Dimitri. Because I have a question here that maybe, I don't know if this is going to help or hinder the process here, but in going through the information that I have as it pertains to preliminary notice by the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, they under state statutes 118.22, section B says that board action is required prior to giving the written preliminary notice.
the board has had the opportunity to discuss the matters that are contained in this segment of the agenda in the past?
My understanding, my personal understanding is, I didn't know that a notice of non-renewal was coming until I saw it on the agenda for tonight. But we hadn't met to discuss that prior to the written preliminary notice.
Pat, I think you missed that meeting.
Okay.
You were gone.
Okay. Okay. All right. Then I stand corrected on that. Did the board, the preliminary notice, was it delivered in the form of a letter, which I assume it was, signed and returned?
If I may, we have a motion.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just looking at what it says here.
Okay.
He's holding his motion, aren't you?
I am.
Okay, I did not hear you hold that, I'm sorry.
Well, this second motion referring to the governance policy where a board member.
Yes, you had made that motion. I didn't know you were holding that motion, meaning pulling it back. Because when Pat asked you if you were holding it, you said no.
This is not a motion. It doesn't get voted on. It's upon a request of any board member.
Your request, I'm sorry, excuse my improper use of the words there. Your request.
Yes.
Pat asked if you were holding that, or in essence, holding it back.
No.
You said no. Okay?
Right.
You said no. No.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted a point of clarification, and now I didn't realize at the meeting that I missed that this had been brought up prior to. So I just had some questions on procedure here that were my concern at this point in time. So, and we can talk about that at a later point if we need to.
Okay. So, you are invoking the request that it be delayed. You have not specifically indicated with my question of a special meeting or a regular meeting, if you will defer that to, if you would be willing to defer that to a decision that I would recommend it be a special meeting, so that we can start moving forward with this in all fairness to all parties, rather than waiting another month, at which time we will be very, very close on any timing of someone being able to follow procedure allowed if a preliminary notice of non-renewal is issued. Okay?
Okay.
Because there's timing of when.
When is the latest that we can get this done and provide sufficient notice?
Not knowing that this was going to come up, I'm not fully prepared other than to suggest that I believe it would be 20 days from the end of the month. And I'm not looking at a calendar. Our next meeting is
April 10th.
April 10th.
So that would be 20 days?
Without looking at the calendar, it would be incredibly close, yes.
I don't know that an extra 5 days that you're referring to, that that the party can request a private, has to fall prior to that, because it simply states that at least 15 days, the notice goes out 15 days before giving formal written notice of refusal to renew, and not later than the last day in April. It doesn't say that it can't go beyond that for a 5 day. He has 5 days whenever he receives that.
Okay.
So that pushes it up a little bit.
Okay, if this board would prefer not to give the latitude and the time to the individual to
Well, it still
present their.
it still gives the time. It can run beyond the end of April.
If that's the decision of this board, then we will push it off until the next regular meeting.
May I ask a question, Avery? Would you tell me, and I'm sorry, could you tell me what policy you're looking at?
This is page 4 of the board governance policy. It's item 2 on page 4 that says, the board may approve new policies or revise existing policies at a meeting by action of a majority vote of the entire board. Upon the request of any member, action shall be deferred for one meeting.
It's talking about policies.
That's talking about policies.
If the board will allow, I would like to offer that we take a brief recess. I will call the district's attorney for some quick input on with regard to the timing of this. Do I have the board's permission and or direction to do that? Okay. We'll have a brief recess. Thank you. Convene this meeting. I was not able to. Everyone ready?
Yep.
Ready?
Sorry.
Okay. Reconvening this meeting. Was not able to reach the district council. However, I will make my interpretation. It is on the agenda for discussion, which is this portion that we're under, whether or not the board approves a preliminary notice of non-renewal at this time. We've talked for a bit as to why there would be an advantage to releasing it now or an advantage to not releasing it now. I am going to ask to see if there is a motion that we do release the preliminary notice of non-renewals as presented to the board. Is there a motion?
I will make that motion.
There is a motion. Is there a second? There being no second, the motion dies. The preliminary notice as proposed at this time will not be released. Okay? That takes us to the consent agenda.
No. We have another person that we had on section.
Actually, I brought that up as two items.
Oh, so we voted on Chelsea's?
I'm not going to bring up names. I realize it was published, but it was not intended that these necessarily have names. In the future, they will not contain names.
Okay, so where does her status sit at this point?
This was coming right back to, it'll come right back to the board. It's going back to the administration.
Okay, but that particular...
Which will then bring it to the board in closed session for discussion.
Okay, okay, but that particular item on the agenda refers to, because in the documents, as a staff reduction.
Yes, they were grouped in the agenda. They were moved from the consent agenda together to a separate item for discussion.
Okay.
Therefore, they've been taken together.
Okay. All right.
And the motion was not approved. Therefore, the motion dies.
Okay.
And at this point, it is remanded back to the administration if they choose to pursue anything and bring this to the board.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Are there any other questions? There being none, I will move forward to the consent agenda. Is there a motion with regard to the consent agenda as amended with the removal of items 4A and B under section B?
I would move approval of consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? There being none, roll call vote.
Sandra Robinson? Yes. Debbie Mannion?
Yes.
Dimitri Martin?
Yes.
Steve Hackett?
Aye.
Pat Fair?
Aye.
Steve Johnson?
Yes. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Adjournment.
Closed session.
Oh, into closed session, sorry, I just lost track here. Adjourn into closed session under Wisconsin statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent C, for discussion and action if appropriate regarding employment compensation or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and under Wisconsin statute 19.85, parent 1, parent E, to conduct other specified public business when competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically to address professional staffing or 2018-19 employment, resignation, retirement, and misconduct, to address support staff misconduct.
Second.
Is the way that portion is stated correct?
Yeah.
In regard to that portion? Okay, there's a motion and second regarding moving into closed session under Wisconsin State Statute 19.85 paren 1 paren C for discussion and action, if appropriate, regarding the employment, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and under Wisconsin Statute 19.85 paren 1 paren E to conduct other specified public business when a competitive or bargaining reason requires a closed session. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote.
Dimitri Martin?
Aye.
Betty Mannion?
Aye.
Sandy Robinson?
Yes.
Steve Hackett?
Aye.
Pat Fair?
Aye.
Steve Johnson?
Yes. We are adjourning and we'll be moving into closed session as soon as we are able to clear the room and all recording devices.